This video is about Heavy Metal, a science fiction and fantasy comic magazine that was published between 1977 and 2023 and is relaunching in 2025. Presented first is one of the first 2025 covers, followed by a sampling of covers from the first issue, which was in 1977, chronologically on through the last issue of the original run in 2023, followed by a second presentation of the first cover in this video. The covers typically feature females in fantastically creative settings and are presented from top to bottom. Unlike many American comic books that were published at the time of it first being published, it was not bound by the Restrictive Comics Code Authority. In 1981, an animated feature film titled Heavy Metal was adapted from the magazine, and it has since achieved cult status. In 2000, a sequel titled Heavy Metal 2000 was released, with the main character Julie being an animated likeness of Julie Strain, who was also the voice actor for the character Julie. In the near future, do you want more movies adapted from the Heavy Metal magazine? Work by international fine artists such as H.R. Geiger, Frank Frazetta, and Esteban Morato were featured on the covers of various issues. Many stories were presented as long-running serials, such as those by Richard Corbin, Pepe Moreno, and Matt Howarth. Some of the artists that contributed to Heavy Metal include Jean Mobius Gerard, Richard Corbin, H.R. Geiger, Milo Manara, Felipe Drulet, Enki Bilal, Juan Jimenez, Pablo Alutri Seriri, Simon Bisley, Bernie Wrightson, Jim Steranko, Esteban Morato, Neil Adams, Barry Windsor-Smith, Brian Bollard, Arthur Suidam, Dave Stevens, Walt Simonson, and Yassine El Ghori. The founding editors of the American edition of Heavy Metal were Sean Kelly and Valerie Marchand. Over the life of the magazine, the two editors with the longest tenures were Julie Simmons Lynch and Kevin Eastman. Kevin Eastman was co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and had grown up reading Heavy Metal. Heavy Metal started out primarily as a licensed translation of the French science fantasy magazine Metal Hurlant, giving many Americans their first introduction to the work of European cartoonists. Metal Hurlant can be translated as howling metal or screaming metal. After a 1975 European trip by National Lampoon contributor Tony Hendra expressing interest in European comics, the magazine's New York offices attracted significant European comic material. In 1976, National Lampoon editor Sean Kelly singled out the relatively new French comics anthology Metal Hurlant and brought it to the attention of company president Leonard Mogul. As Mogul was departing for Germany and France to jumpstart the French edition of National Lampoon. Upon Mogul's return, he reported that the French publishers had agreed to an English-language version, and he suggested the title Heavy Metal for an April issue to be released in March 1977. Heavy Metal debuted in the U.S. as a glossy, full-color monthly published by HM Communications, Inc., a subsidiary of Maddie Simon's 21st Century Communications, Inc. The cover of the first issue declared itself to be "From the People Who Bring You the National Lampoon," and the issue primarily featured reprints from Metal Hurlant as well as material from National Lampoon and more. In 1980, Metal Hurlant went bankrupt, and Heavy Metal severed its ties with its content partner. Metal Hurlant managed to keep publishing, however, and the two magazines reconciled in 1981. Metal Hurlant folded in 1987, forcing Heavy Metal to expand its reach for new content. Relatively soon after this were changes in the ownership of Heavy Metal, plus going from quarterly to bi-monthly. Then, in 1992, Kevin Eastman bought the magazine. Eastman's publishing, Metal Mammoth Inc., published the magazine from 1992 to 2014. Eastman also served as Heavy Metal's editor-in-chief for the bulk of this time, even in 2016, after he was no longer the owner. In 2014, Eastman sold the magazine to digital and music veteran David Boxenbaum and film producer Jeff Krelitz. Eastman continued to serve as publisher of the magazine until 2020 and was a minority investor in the new Heavy Metal, which became at that point published by Heavy Metal Media, LLC. In late 2019, Krelitz was no longer with the magazine, which was undergoing leadership changes. In 2020, Heavy Metal experienced a regime change to CEO Matthew Medney and creative overlord David Irwin, formerly of DC Entertainment. Heavy Metal's 300th issue, which is towards the end of this video, published in 2021, featured work by Torino Liberatore, Mark Bode, and Kent Williams, among others, and posthumous work by Richard Corbin and Mobius. In 2023, issue number 320 was released, and that was the last issue due to challenges that the magazine was experiencing. In 2025, Heavy Metal is relaunching publication with the first issue at the printer as of April 13th, 2025. More videos like this one, short and longer, can be viewed at the Comic Excitement Convention Science Fiction playlist. Please like, comment, subscribe, and click the notifications bell.